A while back in one of these reviews, I mentioned how amazing it was to own a Game Boy and finally be able to play console-quality games right in the palm of your hand. Game Boy games like Contra was, for the most part, just as good as its console big brother, and even that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game was pretty fun as well. Even if they did seem scaled back from a full-on NES release, you could still easily give them a pass for finally being portable versions of great games that were, up until that point, hardwired to your TV. It was an amazing thing to me as a kid that never seemed to get old, so it was an almost complete no-brainer purchase when the Castlevania adventure first appeared on shelves for the Game Boy. The original NES Castlevania being one of my favorite games of all time, so there was no way I was going to pass this up. Plus, if Konami could make a pretty damn good version of Contra on the Game Boy, how could they possibly screw up Castlevania, right? Spoiler alert, they totally screwed up Castlevania. For the most part, it looks like the game got the basics right. You still get a 2D side-scrolling game that focuses on killing horrific beasts of the night while you find your way through the levels, fighting a boss at the end of each one. Add in some platforming sections and you've got yourself a Castlevania game, or so you'd think. Right from the second you press start though, you can instantly tell something went really wrong with this game. First and foremost, this is Castlevania in name only. Most everything that made Castlevania so great on the NES is completely tossed out for the most part. Sure, you still play as a guy with a whip as his main weapon, but that's about it. All those cool power-ups from the NES game are nowhere to be seen here. Instead, the most you can do is upgrade your whip via power orbs. You can power up the whip twice, which gives you a projectile attack when you get it to maximum power. The only other thing that even resembles a power-up is a cross that gives you invincibility for a few seconds. So if you were hoping for the same Castlevania experience that you had on the NES, well, this should be your first sign that you're in for a fair bit of disappointment. Even if they did remove the power-ups, the game could still be saved if the gameplay was spot on, right? Well, sure, but they managed to even fuck that up somehow. You still get the heavy character physics that made those NES platforming sections so notoriously hard, but everything else feels completely off. First of all, the game moves at an impossibly slow pace. Seriously, it's like someone was using one of those NES controllers that let you enable slow motion. Except it's not, it's just how the game actually moves. The original NES game was by no means a super fast-paced game, but it at least ran fast and smooth, along with having extremely responsive controls. The Castlevania adventure doesn't even come close, and constantly feels like you're trudging through molasses. It makes basic jumps and timing your attacks almost impossible, since you'll be getting hit before your character can even start to attack. Everything you try to do feels delayed, and for a game that requires fast reflexes and accurate jumps, you'll probably be tossing your Game Boy across the room in a matter of minutes trying to do anything with this game. The Castlevania adventure doesn't even stop there at being awful either. It continues to insult any previous Castlevania player by throwing most of the NES game's rules right out the window. Remember hearts on the NES game? The more you had, the more you could use your special weapon. In the Castlevania adventure though, they refill your health bar instead. It's so confusing the first time you play the game, since you just expect it to follow the same rules as the previous game. Why couldn't they have just used chicken legs like in the NES game? Why hearts when we've already conditioned ourselves to think they're for something completely different? Even more damning though is how your whip downgrades. In the NES game, if you powered your whip up, you had it until you died. After that, it was up to you to power it up again. Seems pretty fair, right? Well, in the Castlevania adventure, your whip downgrades every time you get hit. Every single time. And in a game that controls this badly with super cheap enemies around every corner, having a fully powered up whip for more than a few seconds is almost impossible. So you better just get used to using the crappy standard whip, since that's what you'll be stuck with 90% of the game. I guess it's also worth mentioning that the game is insanely hard as well. Obviously Castlevania is known for its challenge, but not this kind of challenge. You'll be taking cheap hits left and right with no way of being able to dodge them or react due to the sluggish controls. The game only has 4 stages total, so you could probably still eventually beat it if you're some kind of masochist. But there are far better Castlevania games out there to lose your sanity to, so I'm not sure why anyone would even bother. All said, the Castlevania adventure is an awful game, and an even bigger disappointment. This was finally our chance to have a portable Castlevania game, and instead we just got an unplayable mess that seems to do a better job of making sure no one would ever want to play another Castlevania game ever again. Having a Game Boy was definitely great, but games like the Castlevania adventures showed how badly someone could ruin the experience of playing a portable version of your favorite console game. All this game made you want to do was turn the Game Boy off and play the far better NES game, and that's exactly what I recommend doing here.